Hi, and welcome. I'm Danny Palacio, and this is Awaking Moment podcast. I am grateful that you are here, and I look forward to sharing this week's episode topic, which is part of the Goddess series that came in when I was asking for some guidance about topics for 2025, and 5 goddesses stepped forward and said, I want to be on your podcast, and I want you to talk about me. And I was like, okay. So this is our second of 5 goddesses. And I am grateful. And I'm also kind of nervous, to be honest, to introduce Inanna. She is oh my goodness, I'm not even sure how to sum her up. There may not be words. She's a lot of things and has been a lot of names throughout our history. And so what I will call her right now, that every piece of information that I found and that I tuned into, she is the queen of heaven. So whether you believe in heaven or hell or any of that concept, she's the queen. And I think that's the most important. And so I am going to invite you to just tune in and see what resonates about Inanna for you, what her qualities, her stories might inspire for you to know who you are more. Maybe she holds a quality that really may inspire you to say, oh, I'd love to have more of that. Or she might, because she has some dark, what we would call dark aspects, which are more about the internal battle, the warrior self, which can be powerful, but it can also be challenging. So, okay, so here we go. There's a lot to get through today. I'm going to try and make it as interesting and as story time as I possibly can. I think one of the reasons I'm nervous about talking about her is because her history is so deep and so vast. There's absolutely no way I can possibly sum that up in this one episode. And I have found some incredible resources that I'm going to link in the summary if you are really more interested in the history, and if you're more interested in the divine feminine aspect that she holds. There's a lot of really good information, and so I'm going to recommend that you check those out. My intent today is to introduce her because she has asked to be seen. And to do that, we have to start way back in Sumerian, Babylonian timeframes. We're talking the beginning of our history, written history. And she's one of the first archetypes, and she was known as Inanna in the Sumerian culture. She later changed names by the Babylonians. They adopted her as a key aspect of their divine feminine. Both cultures had temples and had stories of who she was and why she was important. And so I'm going to share just a little bit of that, but then hang on, because I did some meditations and I asked for what is your message? Why did you say, hey, talk about me? And I have that message. And so I'm excited to share that part. And I think the nervous part is I don't want to get anything wrong, which is a good practice for me. It's okay if I get things wrong. I know you're going to find your truth in it all. And like I said, there's going to be beautiful resources for you to dive in deeper. Okay. Because there's so much information, I'm going to grab my notes and bring them over so that I can take a look at them while we are together. And so when I say Inanna was one of the first, she's ancient Mesopotamian. So the Mesopotamian time frame was, oh my goodness, 2000 BCE. So way back, like I said, the beginning of our current written histories. And she was known for the goddess of love, war, and fertility, which is a widespread set of qualities and aspects to behold. But she's also, like I said, she's the queen of heaven. So in that way, she is holding that space for divine feminine, for the rising of love, nurturing, caring, and fertility, because the mother, the queen, would bring life to fruition within herself and within her community and the crops and her people. She would want fertility to be a key aspect. And so we're moving into spring this week. March 20th, 2025 is the beginning of spring. And so I thought that this was also a unique time to introduce her to you. In the Babylonian time, in that culture, they called her Ishtar. And some people pronounce it Ishtar. And so we are in that time frame too. Easter is next month. And so again, that's spring. Because she stood for love, people also connect her with Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is also connected to Venus. So again, this history of connection of meanings. She was known for war. Oftentimes she can be linked to Athena. And so we're talking multiple cultures, multiple histories, multiple stories of how this one entity, this one goddess, was exalted in all these different cultures, which I find inspiring. I enjoy the aspect that she is never forgotten. She may be reformed, transformed, renamed, but she also withstands the test of time. So I found a woman I was reading, and her name is Kate Murphy. And again, I'll link her, but she called her the enduring goddess. And I really resonated with that. There is something about being so authentic and so inspiring that you endure the change of time. You endure cultures. You endure challenges, and you still hold the place of queen. And in all of the history stuff that I read, she continues to be the queen. And of heaven is very interesting to me personally. You know that I was raised Catholic, so heaven and hell were a concept that I was introduced early in my life, and I've transformed that a bit. But I do believe in the collective oneness, the unconditional love of energy, and the eternalness of all that is. And in that, it is enduring, right? It is the aspect that no matter what happens, light, dark, war, love, this essence of being sensual, being authentic, being real in the way that honors your desires and speaks to your heart is something that we need right here, right now in 2025. To know what you stand for and why you stand for it and what you would be willing to do, be, to have it, right? There's something beautiful in that for me. So here's a little persona aspect that I thought this was a great summary of Inanna. And Inanna is a brash, independent young woman, impulsive and yet calculating, kind, and at the same time careless with others' feelings or property or even their lives. So she had this, this really inspiring kind of, I do it my way. She's, one of what we would call, a boss lady. She was moving forward. She was fearless in so many ways. And so to me, that also is very inspiring. I love stepping into more fearlessness and to say, what am I afraid of? And to do it anyway. It's bold. And in that definition, they called her brash, but I think that she is one of those entities, one of those energies, goddesses, however you want to name that for yourself, holds the truth that it doesn't matter which culture, Sumerian, Babylonian, Roman, Greek, she's got all the names. I could go through several of them. She is sovereign, and she moves forward in what is true for her. And she can do it through love. She can do it through conflict, and she can do it through birth. And how might that show up in your own life? Do you do it through love? Do you do it through war and conflict? Or do you do it through birthing? And I'm not necessarily talking about childbirthing, but we birth ideas all the time. Our visions, our dreams, our desires are birthed into manifestation, into our lives. And they're always asking something of us. So maybe sit with that for a moment. And as you do, you know, I love symbology and things that you can tangibly recognize as an aspect of a goddess, a god, a place, an energy. And so her symbols tend to be the lion. And when you think about the lion or the lioness, it also roars, it stakes its claim, it's fearless, and yet it's fearsome, right? Like predators and other animals, when they encounter a lioness and she's got cubs, you don't mess with that, right? And the lion is this beautiful, huge mane, raw, defender of the territory and the family and the lioness, and yet they are sweet and playful and they roll around. And so this symbol of the lion is paired with the dove. So as Inanna became Ishtar, the lion is one of her attributes, and the dove steps in to be associated because it is a winged one, right? And it is representative of more of a peaceful, loving, enduring, in a soft and gentle kind of way. And so there's, again, these two aspects of this one goddess Inanna. And so whether you're drawn to the lion aspect or the lioness aspect of her, or you're drawn more to the dove, both represent her. And so making peace with both, to be able to move into both aspects, both expressions for your own life. I know I've roared like a lion to protect myself, to protect loved ones, to protect friends. I've also know that I've played the peace game, where I've been more tranquil and more open to seeing all the various sides. And there's a time and a place for all of that, both of them, right? There's no right or wrong. Both exist. Some other things, color. So the colors, I see them slightly different, but I'm going to share what I found. And the colors are red. And so carnelian is kind of the gem, the crystal, because it's that deep, rich red. And then there's also the other aspect, which is a cooler blue, like lapis lazuli. And that's another crystal. And I don't have lapis with me today, but I would have shown you her. But both of those interesting colors, red and cooler blue, and then carnelian and lapis, are wonderful to add to your collection if you don't have them. And they do symbolize her and her duality. And so they also have a feminine and masculine aspect because of their colors, red and blue. And so play around with that and see how that feels for you. And then some other interesting symbolism, because of her many names and her ongoing movement from one culture to another, adopting her as a goddess, as a queen. She has a lot of interesting symbols. And so 8-pointed star, a twisted knot of reeds, a rosette, and a rose. very feminine, very powerful. So the 8-pointed star has a lot of connection with Venus, the planet, because in her rotations and in her cycles, it takes her 8 years to do a 5-pointed star in the sky. And so Venus is another aspect that you could dive into and learn from. And I really want to highlight a friend and a longtime teacher that I have had the pleasure of knowing and still know. Her name is Emily Trinkus. She is a gifted teacher, astrologer, and I took her Venus class years ago. And so I linked her information in the summary below and a podcast that she did about Venus and the age of Aquarius, which is what we're in. So definitely take a look at that if the 8-pointed star kind of was like, ooh, I like that symbol. The twisted knot of reeds is really about fertility and abundance. And so reeds, grow in water oftentimes. And when they are twisted into knots, it takes skill. And so, and this sign was, wow, fertility and abundance. So whether it's fertility in the things that you're manifesting, dreaming, birthing, or abundance in the way that you perceive your life, abundance in health, abundance in material possessions, abundance in finance, abundance in love. And so abundance is not 100% equal to lots of money. There's a lot of ways to be abundant. Rosette and the rose itself is always seen as a beautiful way of expressing divine feminine, the way that there are thorns to protect it, and the way that the rose, particularly a wild rose, opens up. It's very expressive, opening. It almost is like turning itself inside out, and you get to see the inner parts of the beauty of the rose and the rose petals. And so beautiful symbolism. And if you're drawn to rose, I would recommend either planting a rose or buying roses for yourself, or if you can afford rose oil, anointing yourself with rose. There are lots of options around spraying or burning a candle that smells like rose. And those are all beautiful ways to connect to that vibration of rose and divine feminine and love and beauty, exquisite energy. Rose is said to be the highest frequency essential oil we have on the planet, which has been my experience. And before I move into the next piece, I wanted to bring in Inanna's message. When I sat with the energies of everything that I had encountered and everything that I was curious about when it came to talking about her, I got a little confused because she is so many things and has lived and has been known as an archetype, a goddess, really since the beginning of time. I wasn't sure what I was meant to bring forward to you around her. But as I sat with it more and I asked her, I looked her up in one of my goddess books. I looked her up in one of my goddess decks as Ishtar, and she talked about boundaries. And then when I looked her up as Inanna, I want to read this to you because it's so what I resonate with. So Inanna is a Sumerian goddess, and her story is the initiation of all women. Every step of the way, she confronted the ultimate death of an old way of being. She eventually emerged possessed of her own power, her own authority. And whether you're female or a woman identified, everyone has feminine energy. Everyone has masculine and feminine energy. And so I want you to tune into that. So if you are in a feminine body and you identify as a female, then ask yourself, do you possess your own sovereignty? Do you hold the truth of your own authority? Our world, I mean, I'm in my early 50s, and my life has been better than my mom's life, better than her mom's life, and so forth. Because women in our society, particularly in America, I don't know all the other cultures, obviously, but we, in, the right to vote, the right to have reproductive rights, to be sovereign onto our own bodies, the ability to own our pleasure and talk about our pleasure, whether that be orgasmic, whether that be fully cooking, whether that be caring for a family, whether that be, the CEO of a major corporation, whether that be running a nonprofit, or whether that be running a soup kitchen, whatever your calling is, own it as a woman. Own it. And if men are listening, I want you to own it as your feminine aspect. Your feminine energy supports all of us. Your feminine energy supports your ability to act, to move forward. If Inanna and Ishtar were the goddess of war and they represented war, why? Why was that so true? She wants you to know it's true because she's not afraid to be on a particular perspective and fight for it. So there's this ability to stand in a power spot and own the spot you are standing. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have identified what is true for you and what you're willing to fight for. I have a dear friend, and she has 3 beautiful, healthy, just brilliant boys. And when vaccines started to get really pushed down our throats, and that children had to have all these vaccines. I don't remember how many a newborn child was dictated to have based on, some people group saying that you needed all these vaccines to stay alive. But they were way more than when I was born. And so she stood up for her children. She stood up for her family, and she stood up for her belief because it was so passionate and true for her. And she went to the state capitol, she wrote letters, and she ensured that her children were not overly vaccinated enough, but not overly, and not on the timeline in which the medical world deemed appropriate and correct. And she had to fight through some really hard thoughts about, was she doing the right thing? Was she somehow negatively impacting? And she came to her truth that this was absolutely the right thing. And each child, she went through this. And I've always been inspired by that story. She has set a beautiful example for her children and her community and her friends like me, that you can, and dare I use the word should, make it important and do what is necessary to have your voice be heard. And so that's a great example of Inanna, of being the queen of heaven, being the goddess of war, being the goddess of love, and the goddess of fertility. It's like, if you're not gonna help change happen, what are you doing? Like, it's important that we look at things and we have open conversations without judgment, without the right or wrong. Everyone gets to choose what is true and right for them. And that can sometimes be very challenging to live in a place, in a world where you either are embraced or you are not. You are either exalted or you are demonized. And it takes courage. And so Inanna, her message to you, to all of us, is to own the divine feminine within, to step up into a greater expression of love, and to be willing to fight for what you believe in. We need this now more than ever. So if you've been thinking in the back of your mind, I I should do something. I want you to change the should, right? Because shoulds and are just not necessary in our world. If you feel called to support an organization, a group, a message, share it. Let people know that you support it. I'm going to do better at that. I don't share enough. I'm on social media, but I don't really love social media. But now I'm going to think about, how could I continue to show my support for organizations, for movements, for ideas by sharing them? I mean, the simple button, share, click, done, right? I will also share a very private thing that I have contemplated for probably a year. So I live in Newburgh, Oregon, and I drive up and down this street. I have to. It's the only way out of the neighborhood. And I drive by this church. It's a community church. And I always see the sign that every Wednesday from 5:30 to 6:30, they offer a free dinner to anyone and everyone. And I thought to myself, I wonder how much a single free dinner, a Wednesday evening dinner, would cost. Like, I'm not even sure what they serve because I've never been. And I've wanted to donate money to support a Wednesday dinner. And every time I drive by it, I'm like, oh, you got to call. You got to find out. There's more information to know. And so I am going to commit to calling this week, find out what their deal is, see how they accept donations, and follow through with my curiosity and see where my desire leads me. So, all right. Yeah, that got really impassioned, didn't it? It's Inanna. She's in me. She's like all sparky. And, she even had me wear this shirt where I love the color, but, you get to see my shoulders and my arms. And I'm like, oh, this is, I don't ever wear this shirt. Trust me. But it's time. It's time to be seen. It's time to be colorful. All right. So I'm going to move on to this man who I found on YouTube. And his YouTube series was so informative. It was very historical from a academic professor kind of perspective. And I'm looking for his name now. Matthias Wams. So Wames. And he has a series called The Mythology of Inanna. And his YouTube channel and his thing on Inanna is so beautiful that I was really deeply moved. And I honestly cannot summarize the history that he has already talked about. And so I'm not even going to try. I've introduced you to her. If you're very curious, I highly recommend you check out his YouTube video on Inanna. It's profound. And in the end, he shares a hymn of Inanna. And I'm going to share the hymn with you as well. He reads it at the very end of his YouTube video. And I want you to just listen to it. And you can listen to the words, but listen to the vibration. Listen to the frequency of these words. This hymn was written in honor of her, and I found it very moving. So I obviously do not have it memorized, so give me a moment to pull that up, and I will read it to you in the most elegant way I can. And I hope that you enjoy her light. This is a perspective of she's a star in heaven. So again, it exemplifies her light, her, the queen of heaven, and that her light is like a star. So here we go. I say hail to the Holy One who appears in the heavens. I say hail to the holy priestess of heaven. I say hail to Inanna, great lady of heaven. Holy torch, you fill the sky with light. You brighten the day at dawn. I say hail to Inanna, great lady of heaven. Awesome lady of the Anunna's gods, crowned with great horns, you fill the heavens and earth with light. I say hail to Inanna, first daughter of the moon. mighty, majestic, and radiant. You shine brilliantly in the evening. You brighten the day at dawn. You stand in the heavens like the sun and the moon. Your wonders are known both above and below. To the greatness of the holy priestess of heaven, to you, Inanna, I sing. I want to leave you with that because she is all those things, and she is the equal and opposite of all those things. When you are from Mesopotamian time periods, and then you move into Sumerian and Babylonian, and then you continually get recreated in the Roman and Greek aspect of goddess, you are eternal. You endure cultures, time. You are timeless. And now is the time to bring Inanna back into our world, back into our awareness and into our heart. And so I wish you a beautiful opportunity to explore her even more. If you haven't ever looked at my summary notes, this episode is worth looking at them because there are links for you to find out more. And there are lots of songs. If you belong to Spotify, or is Pandora even around still, or Apple Music, and you put in Inanna, you're going to find songs, and they're beautiful. And so I hope you enjoy them. And I wish you the very best for the next little while. Next week in the US, it is the week of March 23rd, that Sunday, through the 1st of April, I'm going to be on break. And so I will not be having a new episode. But it is a beautiful time to go and review the 11 episodes that we've had in 2025. Share them with your friends and family. And of course, I'm always here. So if you'd like to book an in-person or a remote session, or ask me a question, I will absolutely follow up with you. And I look forward to connecting the next time. Take care.